Hello, my name is Scott Freed, and this is my capstone presentation. I am currently finishing an educational specialist degree in instructional technology at Kennesaw State. The title of my capstone project is All the Right Kids in All the Right Places, Using Technology for More Effective Class Placement. This all started by identifying a problem in our school. It seemed to be that there was anecdotal evidence, just talking to teachers in the hallways, that there were a lot of misplaced students between all the different levels of classes that we have. Some teachers would report that students were in classes that were over their head. They might be in an honors or an AP class and they were just really struggling, or there were kids who were in lower level classes that needed to be moved up and they were overachieving in those classes or perhaps underachieving because they weren't in the right place. This was having an impact on student achievement in both directions. Either students were struggling and were not really given a fair chance to succeed because they were in too hard of a class, or they could have done better if they'd found themselves into an honors or AP class and they were not there. This also had a big impact on classroom environment, as teachers had to adjust the way that they were teaching because there were misplaced students in the class. Now, there's lots of examples from literature showing that having children in the right places is the best thing for them. I've cited here one study that was done about accelerating children into algebra courses in 8th grade in California. The study found that accelerating children too quickly had a very large impact on their mathematical success in a bad direction, that students were underachieving when they were accelerated before they should be. There's also anecdotal evidence about the lack of teachers using data when they're making student placement decisions. If you ask teachers, well, what are you thinking about when they go to recommend courses for a student for the next year? Usually the answer would be, well, I just sort of think about the things that they've done, and that's about all. And there is no real usage of the vast amount of student data that is available for teachers to go by when they make these decisions. So, given that problem and what seemed like a need to have teachers be made aware of the kind of data that's available to them and how it could be used to make more effective class decisions, I developed this capstone project. It was to proceed in 3 phases. My plan was for phase 1 to be conducting a survey of the current faculty practices and understanding around using student data to make recommendations. I wanted to see what was actually happening. Rather than just talking to people in the hallways, I wanted to conduct a survey of the faculty to see what kinds of data they use when they make these course placement recommendations. The second phase was based on the data that was collected in those faculty surveys. I wanted to conduct a professional development experience, or several, in the form of online videos and person-to-person sessions to train faculty on the use of student data in making course recommendations. Finally, once that had happened and teachers had gone through the course recommendation process, phase 3 was going to be to conduct a survey after they had made their recommendations to see if my information had caused any kind of a change in how they acted. The evaluation plan for the project as planned was that phase 1 would be judged successful by having a significant portion of the faculty complete the initial survey. Phase 2 was to be judged effective if participating faculty judged the information presented to them to be informative and well presented. Phase 3 was to be judged effective if faculty responded to a survey of final practices indicating that they had made use of the information presented when making course recommendations. So, here is the survey that was sent out to teachers to see what their previous behaviors were. I've copied and pasted this from the actual Google survey that was used in the classrooms, or sent out to the faculty, at the time. And we started out with just general demographic data, information on what department they worked in. There were then questions about how much time they spent making these course recommendations, how long they spent thinking about each student, what kind of data they did collect on those students and what they did base those decisions on. And then there were questions about, do you know even how to find a student's COGAT or PSAT score or their AP potential rating? Were teachers even aware of how to find the data that is available to them to make these decisions? And this is the survey that they were. Let's take a look at a few of the answers and responses to the survey of previous behaviors. You can see the first question that I copied and pasted here from the results was, how much time do you spend considering each student's course recommendation? We have a very engaged faculty and they care about the students, and so you can see that the most common response was as much time as needed. But there were quite a few teachers responding with just a few seconds or 1 to 2 minutes. The next one that I've copied for you here is, when making a course recommendation for a student, I study the student's transcript to evaluate their performance in classes I feel are relevant to the one I teach. And you can see that there were a lot of teachers answering that they hadn't really done this. Almost 40% of all teachers saying that they had not looked at a student's transcript very much at all. Next, when making a course recommendation for a student, I consider the student's COGAT score. Over here, this answer was constructed so that 5 was almost never, and you can see that not many people were doing that. Next, when making a course recommendation for a student, I consider the student's AP potential rating. You can see that not many teachers were doing that, and that might be just because they might not be recommending them for AP classes. And then we saw, I know how to determine a student's AP potential rating. And there were quite a few. Almost half of the faculty said that they did not know how to do this, and about 20% more said that they were unsure. So only 1 in 3 faculty members knew how to determine this rating. Next, these are the conclusions I made based on the survey responses from Phase 1. These are the areas of need that I identified. It seemed like there was a need to inform the faculty on the best way to access student data, that there was also a need to educate teachers on the meaning and value of the data available, and there was a need to model the best use of the data once the teachers had collected it. Phase 2 was professional development. Here we ran into a problem. The administrator that I was working with, who is in charge of scheduling, forgot to tell me that they had moved up the schedule. I had coordinated everything with them previously, and I believed I knew when to schedule my professional development sessions. And then at the last second, we got an email to the entire faculty saying that course recommendations were going to be done that day, about 2 weeks before I had planned. And so this threw my timeline up in the air. It greatly reduced the time that I had to perform the person-to-person element of the professional development, and it made the project to be moved to be much more heavily reliant upon digital tools for information delivery. I was, at the end of the day, able to hold one very lightly attended day of lunch and learn workshops in order to have a person-to-person element for people who were uncomfortable learning everything online. The dominant form of information delivery then went to my blog that I had created with screencasted videos to model best practices for accessing and utilizing data. I've done a couple screen captures here so that you can see what's going on. The blog was formatted, I called it Data-Driven Course Recommendations. It was formatted in such a way that there was a section about how to gather data, what data meant, and I did screen capture videos to show instructions on where to find data, what data actually meant, and then how to use that data when making course recommendations. You can see here 2 of these videos, one called Finding Student Information on OnTrack, and another called Understanding the COGAT. And you can see a hint that there's one down here that says Understanding the PSAT score. And there were about 6 or so of these videos that I had created in order for teachers to more fully understand how to gather and utilize data. Once that happened and teachers had made their course recommendations, I sent out a post-action survey to see if they had actually used the information that I had presented. Now, again, because of the timeline situation that had happened, I was not able fully to get the information out to as many faculty members as I'd want, but I still did have a reasonable amount of participation in this survey, indicating that teachers had gone to the blog and had viewed the videos, or they had come to the lunch and learn. And this is very similar to the previous behavior survey. It's just that now we have many of these questions changed in the past tense to see if they have used them now. The results of the survey indicated that many teachers were unable to access the content in time due to the schedule pressures that I referred to earlier, but those who did found it very, very helpful. The administration at the end of the project felt very good about what had gone on, and they liked everything that I had presented and the potential that it had. They requested an expansion of the project in future years and information sessions with the parents, as well as more faculty involvement in what was going on. Looking back in my final reflection, I feel that the project was very informative and a useful tool to the school, faculty, and students if information was used in an effective way. I think teachers can use the data that I've gathered here to get kids where they should be so that they can have better success in school. I definitely learned a lot about this for the next time. If I was going to do this again, I would say that I have to have better coordination with the administrator in charge of scheduling in order to maximize the potential of the information I'm offering. There was a pretty heavy effect on what happened because everything was lined up and ready to go, and then we had a scheduling mess up at the very, very end. I do feel bad about that, and I still feel that this was a successful first run of the project. These are the references I consulted in making the final version of my capstone report.